Well, nearly all of the 2020 Democratic presidential candidates are in Iowa this week for the state fair, but it's Biden's speech last night that's making headlines and some of what he said about education while speaking to the Asian and Latino coalition in Des Moines.
You should challenge these students. We should challenge students in these schools to have advanced placement programs in these schools. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. Wealthy kids, black kids, Asian kids. No, I really mean it, but think how we think about it. We think, no, we're going to dumb it down. They can do anything anybody else can do, given a shot.
Well, a Twitter account run by the Trump campaign took notice of Biden's slip-up, and Biden's campaign released a statement today saying the Trump campaign posting the video without the vice president's immediate correction is patently disingenuous, and it's no coincidence this comes days after Joe Biden laid out how the president emboldens white nationalism and embraces racism, and hours after one of Trump's Breitbart lackeys confronted him in an attempt to gaslight about his response to Charlottesville. I want to bring in CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns, who's at the Iowa State Fair. So, Caitlin, how have these other Democratic candidates been responding to Biden's comments?
Hi, Rena. Well, the Democratic candidates haven't really been responding yet, although the Trump campaign is certainly seizing on these comments. Julian Castro was here earlier today, and he was asked whether those comments were racist. He actually said they weren't, and that the focus that sometimes candidates slip up on their words, and that the focus should be providing access to education. Here's what he had to say.
I don't believe that the vice president was being racist in that moment. You know, I think that, like a lot of us when we're speaking, he just got tripped up in his words. What I do believe is that we need to make sure, no matter what the color of skin of a kid is in America today, no matter where they live, in a rural community here in Iowa or in a big city like my hometown of San Antonio, that they have a good education.
So you see here, he's not willing to go after him on this, and we'll see whether other candidates do when they come to the fair. They're spread out all across Iowa over the past few days and coming up this weekend. But what this slip-up or gaffe does speak to more broadly is this concern that some have had about Biden on the campaign trail. He has a history of making gaffes. The question is whether people have grown accustomed to that and kind of brush them off, or whether this could signify a larger vulnerability for the vice president.
You talk about the vulnerability for the vice president and these gaffes, but I'm curious, all these Democratic candidates have been also talking about the president's own rhetoric. They've called him a white supremacist after the, El Paso shooting. What do voters say? Do they feel this way about the president's rhetoric? What are they saying about this back and forth?
Well, we're here in Iowa where the president won overwhelmingly, but this is also, before that was considered a swing state. Former President Obama won it in 2008 and 2012. We've talked to a lot of voters here who are Trump supporters and continue to support the president. It is very interesting, though, to see Democrats really in unison condemning the president for these words, calling out white supremacy, and also incorporating it into their proposals for gun safety legislation, incorporating funding to combat white supremacy. So this is kind of a new take on this issue that we're seeing in the presidential campaign, and we'll see kind of how voters start to interpret this. I will say also, talking to Democratic voters here, that the issue of gun safety, gun control has come up, and they're more concerned about it than before. Tomorrow, actually, there will be a forum for the presidential candidates to talk about these issues, hosted by Michael Bloomberg.
Okay, and you asked former HUD Secretary Julian Castro about the recent ICE raids in Mississippi as well. I want to play that bite for you.
You have talked about reframing, reimagining ICE. What is your response to the latest ICE raids, and what would this look like in your administration, and how can you ensure border security to those who are concerned about it?
We're always going to maintain border security. We're going to maintain the resources that need to be maintained so that we have border security. But I don't see those workers in Mississippi as any kind of threat to this country. They're simply good folks who are trying to live their lives, provide for their little sons and daughters. They're making our country a stronger country. I would put undocumented immigrants, as long as they haven't committed a serious crime, on a pathway to citizenship. So we wouldn't have that type of situation where people who have been here for years and years, who have roots in this country, who have little children, who are American citizens, I wouldn't put them in that situation.
Does immigration come up a great deal? Is this a topic that Iowa voters are really passionate about?
Well, it depends. If you talk to Democratic primary voters, they don't really tend to bring up immigration as their top concern. Instead, they focus on issues like health care, access to it, the cost. They focus on education and their own economy. Also, climate change is a big issue for Iowans who are supporting Democrats. Republican voters that we've talked to here and those supporting Trump do, though, bring up immigration. When I ask about how the president's doing, when I ask if they would consider other candidates, a few voters told us that they don't want quote-unquote open borders and that they support the president's rhetoric on immigration. So kind of a split-screen moment here in Iowa that's kind of reflective about how the two parties are facing this.
You know, we're talking a little bit about Biden's gaffes. I'm just curious, is he on solid footing in Iowa? There's a new Monmouth poll that shows Senator Elizabeth Warren gaining support in Iowa. She's been polling second behind Biden. What's your sense on the matchup, and what do you expect to hear from her on Saturday?
Right. Well, Warren has been kind of gaining slowly but steadily here. She has a robust operation on the ground that her team thinks can deliver success when it comes to those caucuses. What she'll be focused on when she comes here tomorrow is this new plan that she introduced focused on rural communities, investing in rural communities, which is really important here in Iowa. That plan also includes expanding access to health care, especially in rural areas, and also boosting or supporting providing resources for rural hospitals. She's also talked a lot about breaking up big farms, breaking up the agriculture industry, as well as expanding broadband internet in places like Iowa, the more rural areas. So I expect her to talk about that. Biden certainly is the front runner in this race, and polling reflects that. But I asked him yesterday, actually, when he was here. He has campaigned in Iowa several times, but he's not been successful in his own bids for the presidency. What makes this time different? And he cautioned us that it's still so early in this race, that yes, the difference is now he's a front runner. He hadn't been before, but that he has to kind of be here a lot, build up his organization just like everybody else, and put the work in to kind of make that case.
5 months, right, till the caucuses. A lot can happen in 5 months. A lot to watch. Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.